Iran's central bank reported foreign exchange reserves of approximately $100 billion in 2022. That number has been cited in dozens of analyses as evidence of financial resilience. What those analyses leave out is that the figure included assets frozen under sanctions that Iran could not actually access, oil revenues that were blocked in foreign bank accounts, and gold holdings that could not be liquidated quickly without moving markets against Iran's own position. The usable liquid portion of that reserve figure was somewhere between $16 and $20 billion. When the war started 6 weeks ago, the regime went in with considerably less financial cushion than the headline number suggested. That is the first thing the balance sheet shows. The second thing is the rial. Iran's currency had already lost approximately 90% of its purchasing power against the dollar between 2018 and the beginning of the current conflict. That collapse happened before a single missile was fired in this war. It happened under the weight of the existing sanctions architecture, the COVID economic contraction, and the structural deficit that built up when oil export revenues were cut off from the formal banking system. In the 6 weeks since the war began, the rial has lost a further 30 to 40% of its remaining value in informal street trading. The gap between the official rate set by the central bank and the rate available to ordinary Iranians in Tehran's currency exchanges has widened to its largest level in recorded history. When a government's official exchange rate and its real exchange rate diverge that severely, what it means in practice is that imported goods, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, industrial components, and food staples that Iran does not produce domestically have become dramatically more expensive for the population, while the government continues to pretend, for accounting purposes, that they have not. The balance sheet absorbs that fiction. The people absorb the reality. The third thing is oil. Iran was exporting approximately 1.4 million barrels per day before the war, primarily to China through a network of shadow tankers, intermediary buyers, and shipping arrangements managed by IRGC that had been built specifically to circumvent sanctions. The Strait of Hormuz closure disrupted that flow, not entirely because Iranian exports moved through the strait on the eastern side, while the shutdown primarily affected the main shipping lane, but significantly. Estimates from tanker tracking firms suggest Iranian crude exports fell by somewhere between 40 and 60% in the first 3 weeks of the conflict. At $75 per barrel and 400,000 barrels per day of lost exports, that translates to approximately $30 million per day in lost revenue. Over 6 weeks, that is roughly $1.2 billion that did not reach the Iranian state's accounts. $1.2 billion against a government that was already running a structural deficit before the war started. The fourth thing is the IRGC portfolio, and this is the part of the balance sheet that most analysis gets wrong. The Iranian state is not a single financial entity. The Revolutionary Guards operate what is functionally a parallel economy. They control construction conglomerates, logistics networks, the dominant share of Iran's petrochemical exports, significant portions of the import substitution manufacturing sector, and the financial institutions that move money through those enterprises. This empire generates revenue independently of the central bank, holds assets outside the formal reserve system, and has been specifically engineered over 3 decades to function under the precise conditions of external pressure that currently exist. It is not the civilian economy that sustains the regime under sanctions. It is the IRGC economy. What the war has done to the IRGC portfolio is more complicated than a simple revenue loss calculation. Some of their commercial operations have been disrupted. The construction and infrastructure projects that depended on imported inputs have slowed. The petrochemical export revenues that move through Gulf intermediaries have been rerouted at higher cost. But the core of the enterprise, the financial plumbing, the network of front companies, the cryptocurrency, and UN settlement infrastructure that the Karg Island bypass was built on, is still operational. The sanctions designed to stop that system were designed for peacetime pressure. The question the balance sheet raises is whether wartime disruption has achieved what 15 years of sanctions architecture could not. The available evidence suggests it has not. Not yet. The fifth thing is the institutions that are now functionally insolvent. Several Iranian commercial banks were already technically insolvent before the war under any mark-to-market accounting of their loan portfolios. The central bank managed that reality through regulatory forbearance and the steady expansion of the money supply to keep the system liquid. The war has accelerated the insolvency problem in two ways. First, the commercial banking system's already limited access to foreign currency correspondent banking has been cut further. Second, the real depreciation has created a hidden liability for any bank holding rial-denominated assets against obligations that must be met in imported goods or foreign currency. The banks are still open and deposits remain nominally accessible, but the purchasing power of those deposits is evaporating at a rate that amounts to a slow-motion bank run, even without a panic. The sixth thing is the verdict. Iran's economy after 6 weeks of war looks like this: a currency that has shed a further 1/3 of its value on top of a 90% pre-war collapse, oil export revenues down by roughly $1.2 billion, foreign reserves already below $20 billion liquid dollars before the conflict, and being drawn down at an accelerating rate, a commercial banking sector that is technically insolvent by conventional measures, and a civilian population absorbing import price shocks in pharmaceuticals, food, and industrial goods that official statistics do not capture. This is acute strain. Underneath it all, a parallel financial architecture operated by the Revolutionary Guards was built for exactly this moment and is still functioning. That combination, a civilian economy under severe structural stress, and a parallel system that sustains the regime and remains operational, is not a picture of imminent collapse. It is a picture of a system that can absorb enormous external pressure for longer than conventional analysis predicts, while the population pays the difference between what the balance sheet claims and what reality costs. I spent time on IRGC corporate filings, the IMF Iran, Article 4 consultations, the central bank's own monetary policy reports, and the tanker tracking data to build this picture. The numbers are in those documents. What is not in those documents is any indication of how long the gap between the two economies, the official one and the real one, can be maintained before something gives. That is the question the balance sheet does not answer. It is the one worth watching. I have been your host on GEOLENSIAN. If this analysis revealed something that the rest of the coverage missed, subscribe. We publish forensic financial breakdowns of global economic architecture every week. Until next time.